Joining me now in the Kiss Room, all the way from Canada, is Tim Steinruck, vocalist and guitarist from The Mighty One. Tim, welcome to the Kiss Room.
Oh, Matt, it's such a pleasure to be here. Such an honor.
So I'm thrilled. Now, look, obviously the name of your band is The Mighty One, and you have a new album called Torch of Rock and Roll, which pretty much says exactly what we're talking about here. But what connected us, obviously, was that you had sent me reaching out as, hey, look, I'm a big Kiss fan. I hear you're a big Kiss fan. Let's connect. And the title track, basically, The Torch of Rock and Roll, describes your journey into becoming part of the Kiss Army. Talk about it.
It's a damn autobiography, that's for sure. That's exactly what it is. And yeah, I mean, it starts at, age 13, getting my first Kiss record. Destroyer, of course, which really stuck out at the time. Actually, interesting story about that. I just want to go back before we get into what's on the song. But that album, so I lived up in northern British Columbia, and it was a farming community, and I lived my family was a Mennonite family. I'm first generation Canadian, so super German roots. Anyways, we were like 40 miles from the city. And we'd go into town like every couple of weeks or so, and I'd go to this hardware store, this department store. It was called the Hudson's Bay, which is sort of a Canadian icon. Doesn't exist anymore, but they had a vinyl section, and so I would go and I would look at the vinyls, and that one just always stuck out to me. And I think this went on for like almost about 6 months or so. I was just about to turn 13. And then finally one day I'm in there, and, I'm a kid, so I don't have a lot of money or anything like that. And I just went, I'd been looking at this thing every time I came into town, and probably held it like 50, 60 times. And one day I just went, you know what, screw this. And I just took it and I walked out of the department store. I did not stick it under my jacket. I did not try to hide it. I just went, this is my record, and I took it home. And that's how it all started. So
look, luckily that store doesn't exist, or you'd owe them $3.99. So it's just
exactly.
they're still out there looking for you. It's funny you mentioned being 13 years old, and we're going to play the song when we finish talking. But my favorite line in the song. You were 13 years old when rock was king. That's when I joined the Kiss Army. And
Yeah,
I'll tell you, Tim, that line gets me every time.
Yeah. Hey, man, that's a badge of pride that you and I both wear, for sure. And it was probably around 13 for you too, by the sounds of things. And yeah, I mean, it just, once I had that record, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I got a guitar. And then this huge moment of awakening in the song and in the video actually is plugging that, running 300 feet of extension cord from the chicken pig barn, out to the silo, plugging in my amp and my guitar and cranking to 10 and hitting that first chord, and it would just boom, it just blew my mind. Yeah, I mean that, the lyrics are pretty condensed about the whole story, but the video tells it more. But in that story, I had this dream of working with Paul Stanley from Kiss. I had this dream of being with Kiss. And as I left home early at like 15, and then 2 days after graduation, I moved to Vancouver, which was the 800 miles away from where I was. And I got on the road. And it was weird. Within about 5 years, I was sitting with Paul Stanley, and we signed a management deal and a record deal. And I was with my band Unchained. It was actually a Van Halen tribute band, and it kind of morphed into this original band. And then Van Halen had become Van Hagar. Right? It was no longer Van Halen. It had become Van Hagar. But people really missed the old Van Halen. So we actually filled that hole in a big way, and then started writing original music. And my guitar player, Benny, who honestly, like, just as good as Eddie Van Halen, if not almost better, if that's possible to say. But he went down with our friend Ron Roxborough, who Ron actually ran a Kiss fanzine. And so he wanted to interview Kiss. Kiss was in town. It was 1989, I believe, or 88. And it was a Hot in the Shade tour. And they went down to the Four Seasons Hotel with the Unchained demo tape. And Ron Roxborough wanted to do this interview. And sure enough, sitting in the lounge of the Four Seasons Hotel, there was Eric Carr. And he invited them to sit down, and they sat down and talked to him. I think Ron did a small interview. And then Benny, a guitar player, gave him our demo tape and said, hey, can you give this to Gene and Paul? And the next day, Matt, we got a call from Paul Stanley on his cell phone, probably one of those big-ass brick cell phones, and from the tour bus, and they were on their way down to Seattle, and said, hey, would you boys join us down here tonight? We'd like you to be our guests. We want to talk to you about your music. And it just kind of took off from there. Paul came and came after we signed the deal. He came back to Vancouver, and we actually, in the back of my aunt's restaurant, we did pre-production for the record, and which was absolutely amazing. A couple of days doing that, and then we flew to LA, and we were in Kiss's East LA studio. All the boys come walking in, everybody's there. I think he was seeing Samantha Fox at the time, so she was in there. And and we spent a week in there doing the record. And it just never came out because, grunge kind of killed that,
So now there's a question. Does that album exist? And I mean, at some point, could you put it out now? I mean, I think certainly with the Kiss connection, but now that you're on the Kiss Room, there's going to be millions and millions of fans that are going to want to hear it.
Well, interestingly enough, just reconnected with Benny, the guitar player from Unchained. I hadn't talked to him for quite some time. And he has a storage space in LA, which he hadn't looked at for about 20 years. And he went in there and he's been sending me stuff. Matt, I am just like pictures of us with Paul, some of these recordings. And there's a very, very good chance that those 24-track tapes still exist.
And we need to premiere them right here on the Kiss Room on Montco Radio, where music reminds me. Now, look, having listened to the song and having talked to you, obviously at 13 years old, you're stealing a copy of Destroyer. Then fast forward, you're working with Gene and Paul, and everybody's there. Describe how surreal, or is there a specific moment in your mind, maybe something like a conversation or something where you thought, oh my God, like I am living exactly what I dreamed?
Yes. Yeah, I know exactly the moment. The moment is being at LAX and seeing the chauffeur driver show up, and his sign says Paul Stanley and Unchained. They had both names of bands on there. And it's just like, just like the hair stood up on the back of my neck. And we got into this beautiful limo that Paul had sent for us. And we're driving down Sunset Boulevard listening to our music on our way to the hotel. Like that'll always be stuck with me. Always, always, always. It gives me goosebumps.
That's an absolute dream come true. And it leads us right up to the present, because obviously you have a new album out called The Torch of Rock and Roll. We talked about the title track, of course, is an ode to your love of Kiss. You just released a new single called My Garden. Talk about the new album. Bring everybody up to speed on what is up with the Mighty One brand new album.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this is our third record, but in many ways, this record now is the past, the present, and the future all wrapped into one record. Obviously, The Torch of Rock and Roll, the title track, is really what fuels and propels this record, because it is where everything comes from. This fire that started burning from when I was, a kid at 13 years old, and all of us in the band, is still the same fire that keeps us going now, some 30-some years later. It's crazy, right? And so that sort of speaks for itself. But yeah, then the rest of the record, we released, the first song we released was a song called Coming On, which is probably one of the newest songs that I've written. And so that kind of defines the new Mighty One. Torch of Rock and Roll, again, is the foundation. And then Burden, which was the third single that we put out. Burden is, interestingly enough, is a song that I wrote with the drummer from Unchained, who was my best friend for like some 20 years. He passed of cancer in 2016. And so Burden and now the song My Garden are songs that I wrote with him. So there's another song on the record called Kickin' Stones. So those three songs are there on purpose as a tribute to him and a tribute in our time together as Unchained. And the rest of the stuff is new. But yeah, like I say, it's the past, the present, and the future. Anybody who loves rock and roll and loves old classic rock and roll and loves new classic rock and roll is going to be very, very happy with this album. It gives you all of the elements that you want, including crushing guitars.
That's what I was going to say was really there's this great what I call a 70s sound in that thick guitar and bass and drums, but it sounds very modern. It doesn't sound like a record that like it's as if a throwback, but there's so much of that element of the 70s. That's the thing. And of course, right away, I take it out to my car and I'm driving around cranking it. And to me, that's the way I enjoy experiencing music, with the windows down, the music up. And I'll tell you, it's been a weird week, but having that ability to go crank it up, it's a great rock album. Like you managed to really dive down and grab, the heavy, but it's so crisp. It's a crisp and heavy kind of an album. And talk about the recording process. Where did you record it? Who's working on it?
Sure. So this time around, we kept it really simple. In the past, we'd go to other studios to record drums and certain things, right? But because the pandemic was happening and everything was closed, we really tricked out my studio at home, and we recorded drums and everything. Everything was recorded there, and it was really, just the drummer and myself, Bob Wagner and myself, and Bob. Bob's actually got a history with Kiss too. He was in a band. Remember a band called Econoline Crush?
Sure, yeah.
So Bob was in Econoline Crush and actually opened for Kiss on the tour when they were in Canada back in the day. So, anyways,
I think they might have opened the date in Philly but I didn't see them. I was outside talking to people walking around, but I think they might have done one of the Philly shows. I'd have to double check that. My memory is as fuzzy as your beard, but it really, I'm pretty sure that's great.
Yeah. But anyway, so Bob and I really sort of spearheaded this record, and we just spent almost a year in that studio. He works in the film industry, and that wasn't really happening at the time. Everything shut down. I work in the concert biz. Obviously, that was shut down. So we just put all of our time into this record and just really worked hard on getting great organic performances. No cut and paste or anything like that going on. And really working on the sounds, getting the mics just in the right spot, getting the right sounds. And then once everything was set, just riding that magic for like almost a year straight. And it was a beautiful, beautiful experience. Probably the most fun I've had recording an album ever, because usually you got to pick at it a little bit because you're working and doing this, doing that. But we could focus on this every day. We created our little bubble, and we held the torch of rock and roll every single day.
Woo! I guess that's if you can find a plus in this whole last year of being, lockdown, shutdown. But if you can lock down and shut down in your studio, it sounds like people are going to love this album. It really is fantastic. Tell everybody where they can get it.
So you can get the album. You can go to torchofrockandroll.com. You can get it there, but that's through Bandcamp. So if you see the Mighty One at Bandcamp, that's the place. But go to Torch of Rock and Roll. You get everything there. All of our socials are there. Links to everything. Some beautiful merch that we've just got. Our latest videos. Everything is right there at torchofrockandroll.com.
So we have been talking with Tim Steinrock. Tim, I really appreciate you taking the time. So really just, if you had to kind of sum it up for people, talk in a sentence about the new album, and then kick it off with the title track, Torch of Rock and Roll.
All right. Well, I always say, feel the fire, keep it burning, torch